To better understand our world, ourselves, and our future, this program is made possible by the people of Chevron. Chevron, giving thought to television.
In the immensity of the Pacific, a chain of islands lay unseen and untouched for tens of millions of years. In this primeval wilderness, a profusion of life forms evolved. Plants and animals that existed nowhere else in the world. This Eden was protected by 2,000 miles of ocean, but its splendid isolation could not last forever. Bearing a seemingly harmless cargo, a bold group of voyagers came upon Earth's most distant islands. The collision between mankind and this fragile paradise would change the fate of Hawaii forever. They came in great double-hulled canoes, following a star far to the north. When the Polynesians made landfall nearly 2,000 years ago, Hawaii was a slumbering Eden. Its human history was about to begin. Carrying the plants and animals needed for survival, the Polynesians conquered the Pacific and discovered one land after another, until they reached the most remote land of all. They had never seen any place like it. Towering into the clouds, the Hawaiian Islands were the most massive mountains on Earth. 70 million years ago, long before the time of man, the first of these islands was born beneath the sea. In that distant past, 3 miles deep on the ocean floor, an undersea volcano, an embryonic island, struggled to reach the surface. From this primal hotspot, island after island emerged from the sea, their slopes smoldering and lifeless at first. Life had to come from far away to reach this new land, for it was the most isolated island chain in the world. in the middle of the Pacific, more than 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. Only once every 50,000 years did a plant or animal find its way here and establish itself. A migrating bird brought seeds or insect eggs hidden in its feathers. Or a spore drifting on the wind took root. Plants began to transform the landscape. Water carved and sculpted its rocky slopes. One day, the water would wear the islands down to mere specks of sand. In the meantime, it makes etchings on mountainsides. In this protected sanctuary, every valley and crevice became a cradle for the evolution of new life forms. A single plant or animal could be the starting point for spectacular new species. Over millions of years, seedlings from an ordinary California wildflower became this. It's called a silver sword and is not found anywhere else on Earth. "91 kinds of lobelia evolved, all descended from the seeds of one plant, blown across the ocean from Asia. A few hundred original insect species became 10,000. Old as well as new species have prospered in the island's nurturing isolation. Hawaiian monk seals, the most primitive and unchanged of all living seals, thrived alongside the ancient green sea turtle. Charles Darwin would have been astonished to see what happened to the first finch-like birds that arrived in Hawaii about 15 million years ago. Accidentally blown by a storm to these shores, they survived and eventually evolved into at least 50 different kinds of Hawaiian honeycreeper. Each one is unique in the world, and each has a distinctive beak designed for a specific task. Their songs ring through once silent forests. By the time the Polynesian canoes arrived, most Hawaiian plants and animals were unique and existed only here. Everything worked together because everything had evolved together. Balance prevailed, as yet undisturbed. The Polynesians settled Hawaii's lowlands. There was little to eat in the highland rainforests, and people believed that spirits dwelt here. So few dared to come. But one man ventured here. He knew how to survive in the mountains, and he was after something special. Something that embodied perfection in nature. To the Hawaiians, the bearer of this perfection was a sacred spirit. And only this man knew how to charm a spirit out of the forest. To work his charm, he used the sticky sap of the breadfruit tree, for he knew that a certain bird would come to a certain flower. He was the bird catcher. He dealt in feathers. Hawaii was first settled around 300 AD, when the Roman Empire was giving up pagan gods for Christianity. Its history, recorded orally, is longer than modern Europe's, and by the 18th century, its conventions were as elaborate. The high chiefs were the earthly representatives of the gods. Most Hawaiians were forbidden to look at them. Even to be touched by a chief's shadow could bring a sentence of death. But the bird catcher was too important to be held to all of these laws, for he brought the most precious gift of all. The source of the royal feather cloak. To the Hawaiians, brilliantly colored feathers would confer power. Feather cloaks were symbols of authority and rank, and only a high chief could wear one. Feathers were so valuable that people paid their taxes with them. But the birds paid too. 80,000 of them, many with only a spot of yellow on their bodies, contributed to a single cloak like this one. Others adorned an image, a feathered god, the guardian of warriors in battle. The Hawaiians revered nature, but they also altered it. For centuries on islands across the Pacific, the Polynesians had burned forests, and they burned them here. Many of Hawaii's lowland forests were cleared to make way for crops. They had to do this. Contrary to popular myth, Pacific islands are difficult environments to live in. To survive, the Polynesians had always carried seeds and cuttings in their canoes. Taro was the Hawaiians' most important crop. While this new environment meant extinction for many birds, some waterfowl thrived in the taro paddies. By the 18th century, the storm of change brought by the Polynesians to the lowlands had altered the natural balance. But that storm was only a breeze compared to the hurricane that was coming. In 1778, the Europeans made their discovery of Hawaii. They were to cause as much damage in 200 years as the Polynesians had in 20 centuries. They introduced their domestic animals. Nothing in Hawaii could compete with them. They changed the landscape, crowding out and destroying native plants and animals. And that was only the beginning. sugarcane, pineapples, coconut palms, parrots. Ironically, everything considered typical of Hawaii today is alien, brought here by humans.
Beautiful.
Oh, look at that big old Billy down there.
Now you can see it's eating up pretty well into this area.
Look at them run. They're just taking off over that cliff.
Like cattle, goats were first released to provide fresh food for ships' crews. They invaded the mountainsides, devouring plants that other grazing animals couldn't reach. On the island of Kauai, the volcano has died, and erosion creates dizzying razorback ridges. It is desert dry on one side, and on the other, covered with rainforests. High in the Alakai Preserve, there are places so remote that the human presence is still a rarity. To come here is to experience Hawaii as it was millions of years ago. The helicopter becomes a time machine. But even here, native wildlife is not entirely safe. These men are looking for a missing bird, the Kauai o'o, the rarest bird in the world, if it still exists. Dave Boynton, teacher and naturalist, is one of the last people to have seen an o'o. With a group of state biologists, he is hoping to see it again.
When you're in the Alakai Swamp, it's like stepping back in time. You can feel that maybe you're in a place where no one has ever been before. I just love that lush growth, and to get into a place where nearly 100% of everything you see is native, that's something very special today and something hard to find.
This is the iiwi. The prize of the ancient bird catcher still thrives in this mountain rainforest. Its bill is shaped to fit the curved flowers of lobelias. While the bird sips nectar, the flower daubs pollen on its head. While native birds like the iiwi are doing well, others are more difficult to find. The team is heading for the spot where the Kauai o'o was last seen. In the 1960s, a survey found only 12. By 1981, only a single pair was located. And then, a few years later, they could find only one. A lone male singing to attract a mate.
Is this the place, Tom?
Yeah.
Now, the o'o's tape-recorded song is played back in hopes that the bird will answer.